here's where we are in the process. We have had our first table read that was last month. We've had a couple blocking rehearsals, and then this past weekend we started building the set, which was a really great time. We got a lot accomplished given the fact that we don't have a lot of experience on our crew with construction. So that was Saturday, and I just wanted to go over some of the stuff that we did. The first thing is when we got together, as always, we did our check-in, and then we watched the original production that I directed of the show 7 years ago with a different group of kids. And that was mainly because we're still unfamiliar with the play at this point. We've read it, right, and we'll continue to read it, but it's hard, particularly young actors, but anybody, it's hard to keep the sequence in your head.
Oh, I'm over here first.
As you're going through the rehearsal process, you rehearse out of order often, at least I do, based on who I have available, and so it can get confusing, and sometimes kids can't even, you're like, what's this play about? And they're like, I don't know, something about Alfred Hitchcock or something. So we watched the show. I had them take notes so that they would have the sequence of the scenes in their notebooks at all times, right? So scene 1, apartment, scene 2, the music hall, and just stuff like that. Cast members were, I noticed, and this did my heart good, taking additional notes, not because we're copying the performances, but when we're talking about secondary, elementary, secondary, you got to show them what you want, right? Because they don't have the frame of reference, they don't have the training, and they don't have the life experience. So you do a lot of showing, hey, it looks like this.
The way to play this is, excuse me. Yes.
But then you also want to balance that with an understanding that says, look, as an actor, your job is to interpret the role for yourself with the guidance of the director.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're interested, oh, I'm scared.
Here are some tricks that you're going to use. Mid-Atlantic accent, right? That old-fashioned way of talking, we got to use that in the show. So you got to watch it and you got to imitate it. Yeah, but then you talk about all of the things that you talk about when you're training actors, like why is this person doing what do they want? What's going on in their head? What tactics are they using, and things like that. Anyway, we watched the performance, then I showed them the scene design and sort of asked for their approval. That's important. You've got to get them, you have to invite them in, right? And that's something that I usually do at the very beginning, before we even read the show. The day we read the show, I'll do the directorial point of view. I'll say, here's where I'm looking, here's what I'm sort of aiming at. Then we'll read the show, and then we'll develop that point of view together, hopefully, right? But you gotta sort of invite them into the show. I had done that sort of less this year than in the past, but I had done that, but I hadn't talked at all about design because I sort of assumed at that point that we just use all the stuff that I had stored because I'm a hoarder. And at first I was excited about it, but I was also like, I've never actually redirected a show before, and so I was a little nervous about that. And I gotta say, the first couple rehearsals I was bored.
No, more than bored. Tired of the world and tired of life, to be honest.
Because I'm like, I've already figured this stuff out. So what was great about this process, though, this last week and this weekend, was I started to really think about, well, how can we do this differently? And so it's a completely new scene design. There'll be additions to a lot of the effects we use. So I think it's going to be really good. But when we decided to do the new scene design, that required a re-inviting, right? Because I need you to buy into this vision if you're going to build it, right? And you've got to think that it's cool. So we did that. They were on board. We took measurements, and they had some great ideas about how we could use the set that I had designed in ways that I hadn't thought of. Gabe had a great idea of, in the box seats, what if we put the musicians under the box seats, like in the alcove beneath them, and right, I hadn't thought of that, because the question I had asked at that point is, does this scene design allow for us to put musicians on stage? It's not a musical, but we're going to use musicians to, I hope, the goal is to score the show. But we'll see. I mean, we've got people learning to play violin for this purpose, right? Or people learning to play the accordion. So we'll see what we get. We did some measurements to make sure it all worked on stage and that we could move in the space, because we are collapsing the show. We're videoing this show for competition this year because of COVID. So I want the camera as close as possible. So we're going to collapse the set. So I'm bringing the curtains in and we'll do the show in really a 16-foot window, like 16 by 16 really. So that's really small, especially for a show where there's a lot of action, which there is. The cool thing about this, because it's a Hitchcock inspired show, that claustrophobic sense will be good for us, right? It'll I think enhance that aspect of the show. But it will be a challenge that we'll have to figure out how to make work. Anyway, by that time it was time for lunch. We broke for lunch, and then we came back and we started the build. This was a fun day. It was a fun afternoon because I forget who I'm working with. These guys had never really built a set. For the last several years, my style has moved towards very low tech platforms, ladders, ropes, sort of Peter and the Starcatcher, Old Man and the Old Moon. Those are shows I've done recently that are in that style, and I love that style, and that's what these kids are used to. They had never had to build actual walls. Because we're building box seats that kids have to sit in and act on and move through, they have to be sturdy, so you can't just do flats, right? There's got to be a wall supporting their weight, so, well, like with a floor, right? And they had never done that, so it was fun to watch them figure that out. This is important to me. I think that you should show them how to do it, right? Show them, here's how you screw into a board with a drill. Here's how you build a wall. There's a top plate and a bottom plate. You talk about those things, but these things are still foreign to them. So it was really fun to sort of watch them figure out how to do that. Using a tape measure, these are some of the smartest kids you work with in theater. You get the smart kids. But what's funny is they can do, like I have kids taking Algebra 2 and Trig this year, right? Together, because they're insane. But then to watch those kids figure out how to use a tape measure.
So what is it?
710 and...
Are we doing metric or imperial or whatever?
and 11. No. I don't freaking know.
But there were a lot of sort of heated discussions about the math.
3 as a fraction is 3 over 1. So it'd be...
That's 3.
Because they're trying to do the math in their head and on the paper, but they're also not really understanding how this goes together. And it's a great example of what you can teach in any kind of art class, right? Here's how the math serves you. Make the math serve you. So you can learn math theory the way you can learn music theory, but if you're not going to play the piano or sing or play an instrument, then what good is the music theory other than just if you're interested in it, which is great, right? But the math should serve a purpose, right? And so here it is. Build this wall. It needs to be the base of the box seat needs to be 5.5 feet. That's what they determined, right? Based on the height of the actors who have to be in the top of the box seat, in the box seat itself. We have 12 feet to work with below the curtain. We got 12 feet. Let's do 5.5, 6.5. That's what they arrived at, because Gabe is 6'3". He'll take his heels off to get in the box seat and everything will be fine. Well, how do you measure that? Because you don't cut a 5.5 foot 2x4 for the wall. You have to shrink it because you have the base plate and the top plate, right? Just watching them discover those things was fun.
And so like for studs, you go every 12, 16, or 24, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And since this is going to support something we're standing on, probably every 12.
Pencil.
Don't like mark it hard, so I'm using that to write.
Then we had other guys painting, we had other guys building a window. I'm not sure the window's gonna work, but that's how this works. I think people will offer, adults who have experience will offer to come help build the set. And that is always appreciated and sometimes necessary, but to the maximum extent possible, I think the best thing for the kids, when I feel like I'm doing my best teaching, is when you just say, here are some power tools. Here's how you use them safely. Here's some lumber. Here are the plans. 1, 2, 3, go. And then you watch them, you stop them from doing things that they shouldn't do or from wasting a ton of time, but you also want them to waste some time. You want to you want to give them that room to waste time, to make a mistake and to figure it out. You may have to buy an extra 2x4, or you may have to spend a little extra time fixing things.
Use the hex key stored at the base of the power cord to loosen the hex screwdriver blade guide assembly in basement.
That's a.
Yeah.
They were just amazing. They were fun to work with, and so I am now really psyched about the rest of this process and super excited about what we can come up with that will be cool and kind of innovative because of the restrictions placed on us because of COVID. So yeah, it was a good weekend.
I'm glad you have my back, Noah.